Hi, everybody. This is Dan Stolbarger. Welcome to this week's KFIR Middle East Update. It's the week of April 23rd. So let's jump in right away. Just a reminder to get the PDF PowerPoint that accompanies this presentation. You can get it on the YouTube channel. There should be a link, as well as our website at holygroundexplorations.com. Okay, report out that the Biden administration is essentially telling Israel, shut up, be quiet. We don't want to hear any more embarrassing chatter about Iran and Mossad, etc., because it's compromising our efforts to get Iran back to the negotiating table. More on this, but again, there's a lot of movement behind the scenes in regards to the US and the Iranian and that whole sort of nuclear agreement, plan, coalition, etc. So more on that in a moment. These are our news bites, by the way. In a recent interview, the Saudis, their intelligence chief, basically has come out and saying, you know what, the whole nuclear coalition plan and all of that is not going to be successful in keeping Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. The fact that they're continuing to enrich uranium, even when the nuclear deal was in effect, should prove that. And then in terms of the elections in Israel, this is very interesting, but Benjamin Netanyahu admitted yesterday that forming a government with the Islamist or the Arab Party was not going to be an option. And so he's calling for what they're referring to being a snap direct election simply for prime minister. I think it's his only shot, to be honest with you. I think that he would still win a popular vote on that. But I dare say I do not see either the left or the right able to cobble together a government, a mandated government, a coalition. I just don't see that taking place, which literally means that they will be going to the fifth election. Well, some big news this week, or just yesterday I read this, that the IAF, or the Israeli Air Force, just targeted Syria early on Thursday morning after a Syrian anti-aircraft surface-to-land missile triggered alarms in southern Israel. The SA-5 missile was apparently fired from Syria at Israeli planes, missed its target, and kept flying until it reached the southern area of Dimona. Big concern there, because that's the nuclear facility of Israel. And so explosions were heard. It's not that far away. You can imagine everything that's been going on between Iran and Israel is created quite the stir. Immediately, the IDF, in response to the launch, attacked several missile batteries in Syria, including the one that fired this projectile. And they've struck the territory. So once again, things seem to be ratcheted up, but whether it's a whoops or we didn't mean to do that, the fact that the Iranian missile launched from Syria landed in the vicinity of the nuclear power plant in Israel is of great concern. So we'll be watching this as the days turn into weeks. You know, it seems that Iran is very rattled at this time. This next article, it's slide number 5. Remember that PDF PowerPoint, but a former Israeli intelligence operative is basically saying that Iran is freaking out over the fact that it seems to be so easy for Israel to find ways into the inner circles of Iran. Basically the words were, Iran is rattled as Israel repeatedly strikes key targets. A recent attack suggests that Israel has a clandestine network inside of Iran and that Iranian security services have been powerless to break it. So again, we're going to hear much more, I think, in the next week about this movement towards this nuclear agreement that the U.S. is really pushing hard for. And so this next slide, basically the times they are a changing. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when Iran becomes a nuclear power. And once they have that, what's its impact going to be? Will Israel do a first strike? What about the Saudis? Will there be a nuclear race now? That's what the big concern is. And the next article I just simply entitled, I See a Bad Moon Horizon. According to the information that's received by Israel, the 6 world powers, the US, China, Russia, Britain, France, and Germany, are very close to signing this upcoming agreement with Iran, stipulating that they return to the original nuclear deal that Trump withdrew from. Again, they were enriching at that point in time. What's the difference between all of this? The world, its bottom line is that the world's going to turn a blind eye to this. And, the Americans have accepted this sort of demand of Iran for economic damage that they've received over the years. So we're just going to pour money, billions, if not millions of billions of dollars into Iran and their economy, hopefully to stabilize it, hopefully a pathway to some sort of peace. I dare say that all this is going to do is just enrich organizations such as Hezbollah and Hamas, etc. Terrorism will thrive under this nuclear agreement. Elizabeth Warren, remember her? At the J Street conference just yesterday, Elizabeth Warren raised the prospect of restricting U.S. military aid to Israel. Her quote, "It would be irresponsible not to consider all of the tools we have at our disposal," she said. "One of those is restricting military aid from being used in," and again her term, "in the occupied territories." Warren also suggests that Israel's been poorly served by Netanyahu and has called on Israeli opposition figures to band together to give the Israeli people a new prime minister. Sticking her nose into other people's businesses, anti-Israel. I have no words, just warnings in terms of what will happen when we as a country, again, it's a simple promise that has been tried and true over the thousands of years. Are you ready to hear it? I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. If we're standing on the other side of that line, if we are, in so many words, cursing Israel, our fate is doomed, literally doomed. History proves that out. Okay, PLO. Once again, now we're cozying up to the PLO. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has urged the Biden administration to, are you ready for this, cancel a law that deems the PLO as a terror group. The Palestinians severed all ties with Washington in 2017 when Trump recognized Jerusalem as the capital. a boss who's recently entering into his 17th year of his 4-year mandate, called for the J Streeters to give assistance to repeal all the laws that block the road towards enhancing Palestinian-U.S. relationships, including the designation that was given in 1987. You remember the Intifada, the suicide bombings, declaring the PLO to be a terrorist group. So in his video address, Abbas claimed that this terror designation is no longer relevant. We're all about peace. If Biden were to remove this PLO terror from the terror list, it would be a promise that will be reciprocal. You can trust us and will strengthen our ties. Who do you want to strengthen your ties with? Israel or the forces against Israel, who's made it crystal clear that their demand is to drive Israel into the sea, not to have peace? That's the bottom line. Last up, quotes of the week. First from the Israeli foreign minister, Gabi Ashkenazi. Quote, "We will do whatever it takes to prevent the extremists in Iran from succeeding, and definitely will prevent this regime from having a nuclear weapon." Crystal clear. And then from John Hanna, a senior of the Jewish Institute for the National Security of America. His quote, "The core of the administration's Iran strategy is really a devil's bargain that will funnel billions of dollars into Iran's imperial project against the Middle East in exchange for a temporary reprieve from its relentless march towards nuclear weapons and their capabilities." A temporary reprieve. As I said, the funding of organizations such as Hezbollah and Hamas. The coffers of these terrorist organizations will be filled with U.S. money. That's the bottom line. All right, well, that's our report from Israel, from our sources in Israel for this week. Remember, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Remember, as I said, that Genesis 6, I'll bless those that bless thee, and I'll curse those that curse thee. That's the bottom line. So with that, God bless. Shalom.